Hello. Um, I am Lisa Walzer, the co-chair, along with Sloan Springer of the AIA New Jersey Small Firm Exchange, often shortened to AIA New Jersey SFX. Ruchi Dar, who is also here, is the SFX New Jersey rep to the to the National Small Firm Exchange. We'd like to thank Josh Zinder, who is on the national board, and he has suggested many of our speakers. We try to hold webinars like this one bi-monthly, that's every other month, alternating with Zoom meetings for discussion of topics of interest to small firms. If you'd like to join our committee, and we'd love to have you to help plan future events, enjoy interesting discussions, or if you have ideas for programs that would be of value to small firms, please contact Christina Goldstein. She's our meetings and events manager. Her contact information will be in the chat. We also have a Slack channel, and information on how to join the Slack channel will also be in the chat. Our speaker tonight is Steve Burns, FAIA, Chief Creative Officer at BQE Software. He will share business lessons he has learned over 35 years working with over 1,300 architecture firms. During the presentation, attendees will not be able to be seen or heard by Steve, but may pose questions using the Q&A feature, which is typically found at the bottom of the screen. After the presentation, Ruchi and Sloan will pose these questions, which they'll collect, and they'll pose them to the speaker, and he will answer them. So here's Steve. Take it away.
Okay, great. Thank you, Lisa, for that introduction. And looks like you have an old bio of mine, so I'm going to update everybody in that in just a moment. But thanks you everybody for joining me today. I actually have a nice history with the group. Before the sort of SFX, it used to be the Small Firm Roundtable, and for about 4 years, I was involved nationally with the Small Firm Roundtable, and it's nice to be back under its new iteration. So thank you for inviting me. I'm going to be sharing with you, I think, what is like a fire hose of information. Just think of this title, the 60-minute MBA. Anyway, I had been asked I was actually asked by BQE Software to try and distill the information that I had been relaying over really hundreds of presentations I've been giving for the past 14 years. And they were like, can you put all of that information into a single hour? So that's what this is. So buckle up. By the way, I'm going to ask about 3 poll questions during today's webinar, and I would really appreciate it if you could all respond to these polls, since it kind of helps me as I kind of progress through the presentation to know what the temperature is like with some of the questions I ask. And I think everybody else likes to also hear what the rest of the group, how they respond to that. And the faster we get to that, the faster we can get to the Q&A. And I'm happy to stick around as long as you're all awake to answer any questions. So with that, before I dive in, we'll update you, Lisa, on the bio here, but I think it is kind of helpful to understand how I've come to be before you today to talk about this particular topic. After all, really, I'm just an architect. But what happened is, after receiving my Master of Architecture degree at the GSD, I moved to Chicago to work with SOM. I think, as you can all appreciate, SOM is an incredibly well-run firm. Maybe some of you had cut your teeth there as well. I got very lucky with my opportunities there. After my first year at SOM, I was promoted to an associate, though I think they did that specifically because my overtime hours were so huge. They didn't want to pay me overtime anymore, but for whatever reason, they decided to do that. But they also gave me some pretty amazing opportunities, including spending a year in the London office. And then they asked me to open an office in Berlin, Germany, back in 1991, where we spent a couple of years out there dealing with the rebuilding of Germany after the wall came down. After 7 years, it's like that 7-year itch must have come in. My wife and I made the decision that the time was right for me to open my own firm. So in 1993, I founded BBA Architects in Chicago, and it quickly became clear to me that designing architecture was the easiest, the most fun part about being an architect. Running a professional service firm was a much more formidable task. And we are not really trained to do that when we're getting our education. It's really everything surrounds the design studio. Now, I do believe good design is the solution to pretty much any problem. So I naively set out to design my own software to run our firm, to handle all the mundane, repetitive tasks that really suck all the joy out of being an architect. Anyway, it ended up being so successful for our firm that I was inspired to then create my second company, which is called Orange Loft, to make the software that I built for our firm to make it publicly available. Now, that project took 4 more years and probably 4 times as much money as I thought I would need before we launched our first product in 2004. It was called ArchiOffice. Actually, it's still somewhere around and being used by firms. And then I later came out with a product called Engineer Office. But within 3 years, my career had been pretty much hijacked because we had 900 so firms using our software, and I felt I had a huge responsibility for all of those businesses. So what I ended up doing was selling my first company, BBA. I did the sale in 2007. At that point, we had grown. It's been 14 years since I launched it. We had grown to 17 architects. It actually experienced a pretty phenomenal compound annual growth rate, if any of you track that KPI, of 27% over the 14 years. And I actually attribute a lot of my success to the benefits that were afforded us by having really great technology in place. But it was that experience of sort of creating a business and selling a business, something that you create from scratch. That was an amazing learning experience, but it was also quite intoxicating. And what happened is 3 years later, I got an offer I couldn't refuse, and I experienced my second major business transaction by selling Orange Loft, by selling ArchiOffice and Engineer Office to BQE Software. And that, by the way, is really another amazing business lesson for me, because I learned that if you sell a technology company which has recurring revenue, it is a far more lucrative prospect than selling a professional service firm, which in most cases has very unpredictable revenue. And I think you all realize that. And it also has a lower revenue, net revenue per full-time employee, which is another KPI that I think is extremely important to track. I should point out, if you can ever find opportunities in your business to create recurring revenue, you don't have to be a technology company. In other words, have your clients subscribe to your services, which I could talk to you at length about in a different forum. You would actually be adding incredible value to your business. Anyway, so at that point, I moved into BQE Software, where we had about 4,000 AE firms using a variety of our products on a day-to-day basis. And then another opportunity in 2021, I then completed my third major business transaction when we took on some investment from a private equity firm. And then I completed my role in that transition, which you didn't know about, Lisa, but I completed my role at BQE Software about almost 2 years ago, about 1 year and 6 months ago. And now I have a company called the Well-Designed Firm, and we are really a technology-focused consultancy, but it's not exclusive to technology, but we really squeeze a lot of what we do out of the technology platforms that we work with. And we provide services to firm owners who want to build a valuable and a profitable business. And most of our clientele are small firms, not unlike yours probably. But over the past 2 decades, I have had the great privilege of personally engaging with what is really actually now over 1,400 firms. So this slide deck is a little bit old. And I think I've learned just as much from them as I maybe hope I've returned from that they've gotten from me, and now I think I love sharing all of that I've learned in my exposure to so many different kinds of firms. So that's it in a nutshell. We are going to, Christine, we're going to launch a poll question. So hopefully you all will see a poll pop up, and my question is, what would you consider, there goes, to be the single greatest benefit of owning your firm? These are probably all benefits, but what's the number one benefit? Is it having more control over how the firm is run, and you've been working for somebody and you don't like that way they deal with it? Do you think it's the potential that you can earn more money? Is it maybe you want to be more creative or innovative, and the firm you were working for just didn't give you those opportunities to really design the way you wanted to? Or did you want to have more control over the kinds of projects you get to work on and the kinds of clients, or access even to the clients in a particular, more intimate way than you did when you worked for somebody else? So how are we doing here? We got 22 of 31 people currently responding to that. And I don't know, this is a good gauge to see if I put any of you to sleep yet. But right now we are seeing 54% of you, I'm leaving it open for another minute. Well, more than half of you want to do control over how the firm is run. And 25% of you say it's the potential to earn more money. And we're going to actually end the poll, but 7% say the ability to be more creative. That's the smallest group. And then, okay, you're sharing the poll. Great. And then 14% are control over your clients. So what's really interesting about today's group is typically when I run this poll, the lowest is being creative and innovative, followed by earning more money. That's the third one. But having more control over a business to run is always at the top of the list. So you meet there. So I'm going to stop that sharing, and we'll close that out. And let's move on to my next slide. Okay, so this particular slide, if you attended business school, it is not the slide that you would ever see. Okay, it's totally unnecessary. It would be like me telling you, in architecture school, that you need to combine critical thinking with creativity. Right? These are things that really ought to go unsaid about the profession. But when I talk to architects, that they need to have a business thinking mindset, which is, by the way, a term I learned from a professor at Princeton who I had been interviewing as part of my exploits in understanding more about business. And he said it's this business thinking mindset. And I really, really love that. But this is something that's really, as I mentioned, never been addressed while we were in school. I had one class for one semester in 3.5 years that had to do with business fundamentals. But you have to have this skill if you're going to venture into business. You might think I'm talking about classic business skills like accounting and market analysis, strategic planning, and I have done webinars on all of those topics, but that's really just the tip of the iceberg. There's skills that I think would ensure your firm has a pulse, but I don't want you to confuse having, a beating heart with actually having an active, vibrant, and a fulfilling firm. So I think you really ought to aspire to more than having a minimally viable business. And I actually believe that architects are particularly well suited to have a business thinking mindset. You simply have to analyze situations and data, and then think critically and creatively about how to solve problems to achieve success. But this is pretty much what we do day in and day out when we're dealing with solving problems for our clients, right? So it should be not a big stretch for you to do that. I'm going to talk to you about how you can reorient your wiring to make that something that you're interested in doing. So this business thinking mindset, it's an essential trait if you want to succeed in business. You just learn and understand everything about your company, backwards and forwards. What kind of systems do we use? Why do we use these systems? All of our business processes. And when you have a business thinking mindset, it actually introduces what's referred to, a systemic approach to understanding how the organization operates, how leadership manifests itself. And by the way, leadership is in a two-person firm as well. Okay, so don't think I'm talking about firms with 20, 50 people, okay, and greater. Leadership is you and one person is a leadership situation right there. So how that is manifest, what is a culture? Still, you can have a culture with 2, 3, 5 people. There's a culture in that office. And when the firm leader exhibits this business thinking mindset, or has the characteristics of a business thinking leader, they're actually able to create new patterns of trust and confidence and empowerment. And it's not just empowering them, it actually empowers the people who look up to them. So you have to have the ability to recognize opportunities, appreciate the consequences, and then take some risks. by what can often be difficult trade-off decisions. And they're not always happy decisions at all. But this is just like working with your clients. You don't always get what you want. Your clients will push back against you, and budgets will push back against you, and you need to respond to that in a way that brings success every step of the way. So if you can make every member of, if you've got multiple partners and you can all have business thinking, then your company is actually able to develop what I refer to as a competitive advantage that can differentiate your firm and would hopefully propel you to success. And if you can actually extend this business thinking mindset to everybody in the office, get them out of thinking that all of the firm is about is a platform for which we can get the next project, the next hit of dopamine to design another project. If you get them into thinking that you're actually all in business together, it really means that the status quo is never acceptable. Every member of the office is going to be working to push the bar higher and higher, making the business better. We all make our projects better. We'll stay up all night to make a project better. Now we're going to start thinking about, wow, this firm of ours is like the best project ever. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. And if you are the kind of firm that likes to look at every project as an opportunity to push the design envelope, then you are very well suited to applying those same skills and just focus them inward. Look at everything that's inside of your firm as an opportunity just to push against the status quo, to be the best business that you can be. Now, I also spent way too much time when I first built this slide to create this looping diagram to explain what I think is the process most firms will utilize when they have a business thinking mindset. It's called the business thinking cycle. It's actually just a circulation system for your firm because it's the thing that we're going to want to flow continuously. It's not like you stop and start it, but it's a never-ending process. So in our circulation system, we have three organs that drive the system. They are understanding, reflecting, and then you reimagine. And we could talk for a day on this topic, but really you just need to understand all the people you are engaging with, your employees, your clients, your consultants, prospects especially. You observe all of the various kinds of behaviors that these people exhibit, identify and understand the purpose of all the processes that you have within your office, examine your skill sets, and maybe even identify skills that you don't currently have, you would like to attain. And then you also think about your business model and you relate it to the current business environment. So when you constructed this, there was a marketplace that clearly you thought would benefit from your services. Things have probably changed over time. They never do not change. And kind of re-examine that. And then look at your strategic plan and that business plan, which you better be doing annually anyway. And even if you're a one-person firm, put away a couple of days and just focus on what you expect to achieve. What are your goals for the year? And when you do this, you have to think about all of these, understand all of these parts of your business and how they manifest in what I refer to as the three scales that are inherent in every firm. So you have the organizational level or the company level, at the team level, and the teams could be two people. Okay, you can have a team in a studio if you're bigger, 10 people, 20 people. When I was at SOM, we had 40 people sometimes in a studio. But how do these things work within the firm at the team level? And teams can also fluctuate, different dynamics with different team members working together with each other. And then at the individual level, how do these things impact each of the clients and all the employees at a personal level? And then the next step is the fun part for me. You just think about it. Think about all you've just learned about your company, how it manifests across those three scales. And I think many of you probably have experienced how many of your most creative ideas might come if you're taking a shower or just relaxing on the beach. Well, that's what you need to do as a business owner. Just take a good long shower, but reflect on what you've learned about your business. And what I'm really talking about, and I can talk about this from some personal experiences, as I practiced architecture, when I was given a project, I would think about it all the time. I'd go to sleep at night and I'd imagine the design. I'd be sitting at dinner and daydreaming about the project while everybody else around the table might be talking about some football game. But that's what you literally have to do. Instead of applying all of that great thinking and creativity to your clients' projects, now just turn them inward and direct the same talent to your business. You get to be daring, you get to be different, you get to be creative. And then finally, after all that creative thinking, that's when you start to introduce some of these new structures or some new processes or new tools, which, by the way, that's my start, was building software tools to help make my business different and better. New methodologies or practices to deliver what, as I mentioned, the ever-evolving marketplace is going to be seeking from you or your firm. And that process that I've just described to you does not end. You don't do it every December, right? You think about this and you set time aside, block a calendar to think about your business. Most people are just putting out fires all day long on their projects or dealing with other kinds of things, and they're not focused on their own house. And I personally believe your firm is the best project you ever get to work on. You don't have to worry about it being built in concrete and stone and steel and glass and then having to do some expensive change. You get to constantly iterate very easily and change the company as opportunities present themselves to you. And I think this is typically obvious in other polls, but not necessarily with tonight's crowd, where I think it was like 25% maybe, who said, the opportunity, a business is an opportunity to make more money. But I have found mostly very few architects go into this profession for the money. We love what we do. I frankly know architects who would work for free, and some do, like you, Lisa, just for the pleasure of designing a project and having, people just enjoy what you can create. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but passion just is not enough. It takes hard work, but that actually isn't very difficult for people who've perfected the all-nighter. What you need to do is you just need to find passion in every facet of your business. I know many architects, you will be one of these, I'm sure, who've committed themselves to diving deep into a variety of facets of the AEC space. It could be material science, it could be the means and methods of construction, zoning and building codes, maybe developing these CAD or BIM super user skills. I've met people who are extraordinary at preparing specifications or color theory, you name it. But if I would ask them, hey, let's sit down and talk about how accounting can actually improve your firm's metrics or any of the KPIs that I discussed during other webinars, they kind of yawn and they're like, if I say, hey, let's talk about the business plan or let's revisit the strategic plan, I'll get these doe-eyed looks like, hey, Steve, that's all very nice, but can I get back to working on my project? All we need to have are these satisfied clients by just designing great architecture. I'll push back. Knowing as much as you can about business will make your firm better, just as much as the more you know about materials and construction will make you a better architect. Okay. It'll bring great value to your projects. You can't just be a good designer and expect that by extension, you're going to grow and be a great architect. You have to become a master of your craft. And the same is true of your business. You can't be a good designer and expect that that is going to lead to having a strong, successful firm. There is so much more you need to master beforehand. And I know countless incredibly creative, talented designers out there, great architects. They're not all very successful at a business. I think we can all admit that's not what makes you from a great architect to having a great business. So we got poll question number 2, Christine. So if we can go ahead and launch that, which is, this is slightly different, so understand the nuance. What do you think should be the single highest priority of a firm owner? So for those of you who own a business or those of you who might be about to launch your own firm, what's your number one priority? Is it going to be business development, which means finding new clients, new opportunities for your firm, maintaining great relationships with your current clients, networking events, dealing with marketing, that kind of thing? Is it financial management, which is making sure your firm is financially healthy, making sure you set budgets and then tracking your expenses and ensuring that your firm is profitable? Is it what I call talent management, which is let's attract, retain, and develop talented professionals within the firm? That means also you could be doing mentorship as well. So is that the number one priority for the firm owner? Is it quality control, which means making sure that your projects are consistently high quality, they meet all the relevant regulations and standards and adhere to the best practices in the industry? Or is it the last one about innovation, which I'm going to guarantee will be the bottom of today's poll from the previous one, which is we're here to encourage creativity and innovation within our firm. Maybe we're going to find some new approaches, new technologies that can enhance our capabilities and our competitiveness and maybe serve our clients better. So I've rambled on long enough for all the responses to come in. We're doing pretty good. And Christine, you can go ahead and share the results. But as always, the majority of you, in this case, 50%, right on the nose, say it's business development. So I think that's the right answer. It's tied for financial management and talent management, caring about making sure the firm's profitable and the people are trained and well and happy in their careers. That's almost 20% for each of you. And quality control is close to the bottom. And nobody said innovation. So good. Thank you for sharing that. We can turn that one off. And let's move on to that next slide. Okay, I'm going to close out this section with one of the most important and overlooked components of having a business. So I said earlier that most architects I meet think of their business as the platform where they can just get more projects, right? So they get to design. It's about that. But a business is actually not about that. A business is about value creation. And as professionals, we are extremely good at providing our clients with value. So if you're an architect, most typically that value is manifest in a building or better yet, a great work of architecture. And in the end, you were most likely paid nominal fees for your services, but your client is left with this product, which will most likely increase in value, maybe at an extraordinary rate, while you simply move on to your next service project. So as a business, you should be discovering what people need or want, and then you create value in your firm as the means of delivering what the market needs. So your firm is in many ways no different to you than that building was to your client. And when you understand that, you will want to invest the time and the money to build the greatest firm that reflects who you are and what you aspire to, just like you probably want your architecture to reflect what you believe is great design. So let's just make it happen at the firm level. Now, I'm going to assume you've created a valuable firm. Big jump right there. What do? You must focus on marketing. And I know a lot of firms find this, if not distasteful, they just put it at the bottom of their priority list. Like, isn't it enough for us to do great work? No, you actually need to attract attention. You need to build demand for that amazing firm you created. After all, you're in a market that is honestly, it's overflowing with incredible talent. And so get over your pride that if you just do the great work, future work will follow. You have to get serious about marketing your firm. And most firms think we are busy. We're turning down work. We do not need to waste any time or resources and waste any money to market our office. Now that might be true for very few firms out there. I'm not sure that is true ever. But history has shown us that at some point work will slow down. Maybe it's changes in the economy. Maybe it's changes in taste and style, whatever it is. You never want to be in the position of marketing your services when you are hungry. So studies show us you don't go to a grocery store when you're hungry. You're going to end up with way more food than you'll ever need, and probably much of it's going to be unhealthy. And you should not go out looking for work when you are hungry either. Your Prospects are going to sense that you are hungry. You're going to take projects you otherwise would not want to take. And it's very hard to market a business that isn't busy, that's available all the time. Okay, again, we're going to assume you got an amazing firm. This is my favorite slide. You figured out what the market needs, and the marketing investment's paying off, and you got those prospects who are knocking on your door all the time. So converting a prospect into a paying, loyal, enthusiastic client is the job of the S word, sales. Now, when I talk about sales, I don't want you to misconstrue what I'm saying. You know, you're not like Danny DeVito here in the movie Matilda. You know, like all we got to do is put you behind the wheel of one of these beauties. That's not you. You're not a used car salesman. You're not, you know, Harry Wormwood here. You're not in a fat tie, a fake gold watch, a tweed jacket, and a pork pie hat. You know, looking like Dean Martin. You're a bona fide, certified, award-winning professional, right? Anybody who walks into your office, they should be grateful that you are considering working for them. So this slide is, I guess, my meager attempt to be a little light on the subject that owners of firms like you all are actually professional salespeople. Okay, so honestly, I understand sales, it's a pejorative in the minds of skilled professionals. Your excellent work really ought to stand for itself, and maybe having to stoop to being a salesperson is beneath your lofty stature. So I want to try and reorient your thinking here as well. So I've talked about the firm, reorient your thinking about the purpose of a firm, and now I want to just reorient yourselves about marketing. At its most basic, sales is about building loyalty and trust between you or between your firm and your client. Those two things alone cause your client to recommend your firm to others or to return with future work. Loyalty and trust. Notice I'm not telling you that giving them a beautiful building delivered on budget, you know, and on schedule, that's where loyal clients come from. And most of the professional service firms will sell loyalty and trust through the principal in the firm or one of the partners. And I want you to think that every single conversation, every phone call, every email, every discussion, in person or not, from the firm owner to a prospect or a client, that's actually a sales communication. You've signed a contract with them. It isn't over. It's never over. You are always in sales. Every interaction with a client or a prospect should leave them with the proper impression you are a trusted advisor. If there's only one lesson you're going to learn tonight, this is what it is. You are always in sales mode. One of the interesting things about being in sales is you can provide value before your client even realizes what you're doing is actually sales. And when we speak about value-based sales, what you are is you are laser focused on the needs of that client. And when you take the approach of a consultant providing value to your client or the prospect, you're going to find that their decision is based on the potential value that your services will provide. Being able to demonstrate value to the client is what they need to see. It is not about you or your design skills or even your team and the incredibly efficient processes your firm has devised. Those are all things we're working on. But from your client's perspective, they have to see what it means to them, because they can walk down the street and find another firm with similarly skilled professionals, and assuming they're not bargain shopping, what do you think will make the difference in their minds as to whether to hire you versus another qualified architecture firm? And I'm going to share a personal story. We won a client that came to our firm to help with the creation of a new building. And it was a sexy proposition. Frankly, any architect would love to have been offered this. Based on the findings that they received from a real estate consultant they hired, they were convinced that their current facility was incapable of servicing their needs into the future. Now, we took that RFP and we started to analyze it. And we were able to demonstrate in a presentation during the RFP stage how they can save more than $2 million in construction and carrying costs, as well as through tax abatements by investing, renovating, and adding to their existing facility. And in fact, how this particular approach would not only save them money, but it would be more valuable in the eyes of the public and their customers. This is where the needs of the client come ahead of the aspirations of the architect. This is how you become a trusted advisor. After that meeting, we earned their trust, a contract was signed, and when we asked them why they chose us, they referred to the fact that, well, we went far beyond what every other firm did, which was to just take the real estate professional advice and just respond to the RFP as if they were just a generic client. We were more interested in understanding their needs and their business than any other of the prospects. We wanted to let them know what this project would mean to their firm. So our fees were not even a consideration in the contract negotiations because they had already won. They were saving a couple of $1 million and the project hadn't begun. This is an example of value-based sales. And I think hopefully everybody out there has done some kind of a similar story where you can differentiate your firm from the others by really focusing in on the needs of the client. And if you expect to win against a competitor, that place to start is looking beyond the words written on an RFP, or if it's less formal than an RFP, whatever that interview was, you have to do your homework, learn as much as you can about the prospect and their project and the community where it's being considered. Your focus will be on teaching, not selling. So now imagine that. Sales isn't about selling, it's actually about teaching. Every interaction that you have must add value in their eyes. Or another way to say that is any interaction that isn't adding value, at least in the eyes of the client or the prospect, that's going to create a greater gap, making it more difficult to build the bridge between the two of you. Now, I'm not going to share any names, but I know an amazingly prolific architect who could convince their clients to build any crazy idea they have. And I am sure you all have seen some built projects and scratched your heads wondering how the heck did that thing ever get off the drawing board and become a reality? This is happening not because the architect or the design team at the firm are just highly competent professionals behind, I'm sure they are. That might be part of the equation, but it's actually happening because the principal is just amazing at sales. Okay, segue. I did some research and have found that 97% of law graduates, they're employed, but only 51% of them are working in a law firm. And that's a profession like architecture that requires an incredible amount of education, and it has steep barriers to licensure. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that clearly about half of the professionals in law realize that they have skills that are extremely valuable outside of the traditional practice. But for some reason, architects have a very narrow focus on what their amazing skills can be applied to. And I'm not suggesting that you should be like me, finding some alternative career. I'm just suggesting that you possess some very formidable skills that can solve the problems of so many of your existing clients and those prospective clients who are not just looking for traditional services. After all, a lot of our clients don't even understand what architects do, right? So if you are one of those firms that uses the list of services that is provided to us through the AIA to help your prospect understand what you can do for them, what is your value, you're actually missing out on being able to differentiate yourself from your competition. So everybody's got the same menu. If any of you have worked on a new restaurant, something like that, you're going to understand what I'm getting at. What differentiates one great restaurant from any other? So you might think, oh, it's about the amazing chef. Maybe it's the beautiful ambiance that the architect created. But great food and great design alone are not the keys to a successful restaurant. And just like that list of standard services that architects can provide, your client is most likely interested in things that are not on the menu. And that's just another facet of having a business thinking mindset. Understand the problems that your clients or prospects have and make sure that they see you and your firm as part of that solution. You have to solidify yourself as a true long-term asset. So 42 minutes in here, we're going to talk about money. I know this is kind of a difficult topic for a lot of architects. It's like the dirty little secret that we know is happening, but no one wants to talk about it. So I want you to put on that business thinking cap, and let's talk about why is money so important? Why I want you to have it on your mind every day. Because money's like oxygen. You don't think about it as you go about your normal day-to-day activities. It's always around us. We take it for granted. But if any of you have ever been in a crisis where you're deprived of oxygen, maybe you're choking on food, unfortunately, or maybe you're scuba diving and you're running low on gas, you know what being deprived of oxygen can do to your psyche. It is very hard to remain calm and to think clearly, to act wisely when you're deprived of oxygen. And the same thing happens to your firm when it's deprived of money. Some very bad things will happen. So I want to talk to you about profit. When your firm is profitable, you have the ability to grow. And I know most of you are thinking, hey, I'm not interested in growth. I have a small firm and I want to keep it that way purposely. You enjoy your lifestyle, and growing your firm will change, your lifestyle. And so I understand that mindset. Actually, much of our profession is comprised of small firms, which exist to serve the life goals of the principal or maybe a small group of owners. So maybe you have 3 people, or maybe you have 15 people, whatever you might consider as your small firm, and you don't ever want to be a firm of 50 people. That is absolutely fine. I am not going to suggest to you that growth means you literally have to grow your firm. And we'll get back to that in a moment. So there's 2 kinds of growth. There's organic growth, and then there is strategic growth. They're very different approaches. I just want to touch on these a little bit. The bottom line is you must always be profitable, and you must find ways to seek the highest profitability. Now, the organic growth, this typically involves increasing the size or maybe the scope of your business through some internal means. It's a slower, more gradual kind of growth than strategic growth, which I'll get to in a minute, but it's generally more sustainable over the long term. And when you think about organic growth, it means it can happen without the need for outside financing, like taking on any debt. You can achieve this growth in your firm or these changes in your firm through your own profits. And here's just a couple of examples, or not, maybe 5 examples of things that can happen when firms are looking at organic growth. It could be, I want to increase the number of clients. Maybe it's going to be through word of mouth referrals or networking events, marketing events, those kinds of activities. All of these will cost money, by the way, but they're your own money. Maybe you want to expand the range of services offered by your firm or some new expertise. Maybe there's things going on in the marketplace that require your firm to be just more adaptable to providing new services. And so we need to grow to create new services. Maybe you do need to hire some new staff or maybe a contractor just to meet some increased demand for your firm's services. You better have money in the bank for that. Maybe you do want to invest in marketing or branding efforts to increase your firm's visibility and your reputation. And as you help to create this unique selling proposition about what differentiates your firm from anyone else, you need to get that message out. A lot of these are not very expensive to do, by the way, with social media that we have. Maybe you want to diversify your portfolio, take on new kinds of projects, or work in a new geographic region. Maybe you want to do like what I was doing, which is developing new technologies to improve your firm's efficiency and productivity. Pretty much almost all of the money that we were spinning off in our firm at BBA Architects was invested back into technology. Or maybe you want to expand your firm's footprint. You want to have a new office. Maybe you love spending the winters in the mountains somewhere going skiing, and you want to have a physical presence there where you can continue to do work and live that lifestyle. All of these things are going to be paid for by having profitability and an abundance of oxygen that can afford you to take on any dream you have. And again, if you are satisfied with the size and culture of your firm and you have no interest in any of these kinds of growth, just recognize that increasing your profitability enables you to pay higher salaries that will attract greater talent. It allows you to be more selective in the projects you take on. So finally, you have the power, and money was behind that power to pick and choose the clients and the project types that will fulfill your strategic or your personal life goals. So no matter what you want to do with your firm, growing the bucket of money that flows into it will make whatever good things you want to have happen. The next one is strategic growth. I'm not going to maybe spend so much time on this slide because I don't know how interested you all will be in this. It carries more risk, but it also has more rewards. It also requires more planning and having more resources available. But there is mergers. Maybe you have another firm and you want to merge with or acquire them outright. Maybe you want to partner with another firm. That might give you access to kinds of new markets. Maybe you, again, want to diversify your portfolio. These can be done through strategic growth very quickly. The strategic growth is going to be driven by your strategic plan, and it's really designed to help your firm achieve very long-term objectives. And it also typically involves a strategic investment. It could be satisfied by your profits that maybe you've been investing over the years. It's kind of part of your retained earnings and you've got some cash in bank, or it might require your firm to take on some debt, which becomes less of a burden as long as you're profitable and that oxygen continues to flow to pay for that debt load. We got our third and final poll question before I turn the corner here, which is, how do you describe the software that your firm uses to manage your business and projects? So if you can launch that, Christine, I don't think it's popped up yet. I'll go do it. Maybe Christine took a break. Let's see. More polls. Oh, it is up. Good. So do you have a state-of-the-art technology system in your office that is working great? Is your system dated? It's hard to use? Do you have management software, but you don't like it, so you don't even use it? Maybe you're a firm that just has some spreadsheets, which is very common in small firms. We're just going to run our business through some spreadsheets, or maybe one-trick pony tools, a scheduling tool or a resource allocation tool. Or we don't use any kind of management software. Work comes in the door, we do it, and it just all seems to happen. So we're getting a 76% participation right now. Ooh, what happened there? And I'll just share the results here. It is 42% of you are using spreadsheets, which makes total sense to me because we are dealing with small firm exchange here, 42%, followed by 29%. A third of you almost have a state-of-the-art system. So again, kudos to you. That's then followed by, you don't use any management software. So 17% of you are using no management software, or 21% combined, no management software, or we have software, but we just don't even use it. So that's cool. Thank you for sharing that. And with that, whoops, why does that keep coming up? Let's just close that little window. I'm going to move to my next question. Okay, so I've turned the corner. I'm really going to talk about technology, which, as I mentioned up front, is really part of the passion that I have in firms, developing successful firms. So got this quote: Galileo said, "Mathematics is the language in which God has created the universe." And fortunately, for those of us who are not so mathematically inclined, if you are in business, you may not need to know the math, since we have technology that makes that easy, but you have to know the numbers. And that is how business speaks to us. Business speaks to you through metrics, through measurement of things. And we all know the saying, you can't manage what you can't measure. There's a similar expression, which is, what gets measured gets managed. I actually kind of like that. But regardless of what you feel about measurement, I will let you know that you should not be making business decisions, none of those organic decisions or the strategic decisions, based on your gut feeling. Let's try a couple ones. If I were to ask you, about 30% of you who've got this stellar software, if I were to ask you, how do you develop your hourly bill rates for your employees? And that assumes that there are times when you might be billing on an hourly basis. I know that the overwhelming majority will say they pick those rates by knowing what other firms charge for people with similar skills or experience in the New Jersey area, let's say. So you're kind of like a retailer who is matching the prices of one of your competitors rather than charging what you believe is really appropriate for the kinds of value you bring to your, in this case, customer, which is one of your clients. Or maybe even charging an hourly rate that is actually calculated based on the actual costs to keep that person employed, plus a reasonable markup for overhead and profit. Well, KPIs, key performance indicators, will actually provide you with business intelligence as to what that hourly rate should be. And it's based on reality. It's based on quantifiable data. And this is not the kind of exercise you would ever want to do in a spreadsheet. If I were to ask you, do you know the margin between what your employee costs you and what they earn for you? Would you know, or would you even care? And if you respond with no to the first part of that, which is, I don't know what it is, you're actually in the 75th percentile of your peers. And if you reply no to the second question, that you really don't care about that margin, you're in the wrong webinar. If all you knew was the true cost of every hour of every employee and the true revenue derived from every hour of every employee, you would have amazing power. Then there's that common phrase that knowledge is power. And knowledge is actually just knowledge. Having the ability to act on your knowledge is where you really get that real power. So when you know the numbers behind every facet of your business, that's when you have the ability to wield the power to exploit the things that are working in your firm or to change the things that aren't. So it's these KPIs that give you the intelligence to make smarter business decisions. So I've frequently asked, like, what are the best practices to implement, let's call it a metrics-oriented leadership system for your firm. And it really comes as no surprise that most firms will proudly proclaim that their employees are their greatest asset. After all, they are typically highly educated people. They spent years honing their skills. And I think most of you might recognize they're probably undercompensated for their skills and talents. Well, your technology that's in your office is actually just like another employee, and it requires the same kind of investment and care. So most all of you have done an exceptional job in due diligence in researching which CAD or BIM software solution that's out there on the market should we select. And you select the tool that meets your needs. You hopefully invest in training your staff so that they know how to exploit the tool that you have selected and make the most of that investment. And the assumption is that when people are properly trained to use that software, it's going to make them more productive. It's going to yield maybe a better product, and it will make everybody, from your employees to your consultants to your clients, everybody's going to be happier. But that is no less true when it comes to finding the best tools to help your firm operate. Now, when I speak of operations, I'm talking about things from the very banal but incredibly important tasks like time and expense tracking, project scheduling, project budgeting, resource allocation or resource management, invoicing, getting those invoices out to your clients, accounting, human resources, and even CRM. And my finding is that many small firms neglect this technology at the office. They use those spreadsheets that I pulled you on earlier, or most of you are really using, or the biggest cohort are using spreadsheets. And I have webinars specifically on the topic of the damage of working with spreadsheets, which we don't have time to get into. The tools that you use to run your business, just like the tools you're using for the CAD and the BIM software to design and prepare your deliverables, it's going to improve your efficiency. It's going to provide some real structure and consistency in the office. It's going to reduce your risk. It's going to simplify your management. And it kind of creates a more satisfying culture in my experience. And as I found early in my career, it will free you from the repetitive and mundane tasks that so many firms suffer from when they have to deal with the back office responsibilities, the things that they were never trained to enjoy that. They were trained to enjoy the creation of architecture. So if you are a sole proprietor firm attending today, you are probably using a lot of the same CAD BIM software tools that the largest firms in the world use, because technology is the great leveler. So please, if you're a small firm, don't think you shouldn't be exploiting this kind of technology to run your firm, just like you do to exploit technology to design and prepare those deliverables. And then I would also say, please always invest in and train in the business and the deliverable technologies for your firm. And that's so critical. I do see firms who will find a tool that's great, and then they bite the bullet to invest in it, but then they don't train their staff, and they really don't get to optimize that. So please do that. Now I'm going to share with you next couple of minutes here, just some slides from my old company at BQE Software, which this is using their current BQE software native cloud solution. It's called BQE Core. Maybe some of you who are part of that 30% or so that have loved their software, maybe you're one of those. So there are a number of solutions that are out there on the market today, and I want you to look into them all. But this is just an example of what I believe is an alternative to the firms who are managing like with the old world techniques of spreadsheets or those standalone disconnected software tools, or having some of you have these obsolete software solutions that you aren't even using, or they're not even in the cloud. So here we are always assured the data is always in real time, and it's that way because it's in a single source of truth. So it's going to be accurate. And I have created here on screen a dashboard that looks like at all the financial KPIs that I personally have privilege to see and I want to know about. Then there are no mysteries when you use tools like these. I even on the upper right have real-time access to information coming from our online bank and credit card accounts. I don't have to leave my accounting software and then run in to look at what's in the bank this week. Do I have enough cash to pay the bills? That kind of thing, right? So everything's on screen in real time. This is a dashboard I created that I put some widgets on it that tell me the kinds of things that I personally care about. So in the upper left, I have it's called a project status widget, and it is monitoring all of my projects and seeing how are they performing against either the internal budget or the contract. I can flip back and forth, and you see in the upper right of the widget. And it is actually displaying that 5 of my projects have warnings next to them. And I can drill down in to find out what's the problem. Why am I not performing right? To the right of that, I can actually see the work that is expected of me this month, and is looking at all the project schedules, is looking live into my time card, and is telling me in real time, how am I doing with my time compared to what I was expected of me. Oh, I was supposed to work on picking up the red lines on the XYZ project. I was given 6 hours to do that this week, and I haven't put any hours in. That kind of information is available to you. On the bottom, I have all my to-dos. I have access to documents that I've been linking to their respective projects. Now, I'm looking at a Gantt chart for one of the projects, and I see not only who are the people or the teams of people who are working on particular activities over the timeline of the project. I can also see that the horizontal bar gets a little darker in proportion to the amount of time that the team members are working on those particular activities. So I get real-time feedback that if I see we've got a milestone event coming up and nobody's been working on the color and material board, no one's put any time on it. Either they haven't been filling out their time card, and there's other discussions we can have on that, or we're not going to be ready for that meeting. And it's also an example of how data in a single source of truth can be exploited to inform other areas of the business. Okay, so this is actually called a project performance dashboard. They've recently changed this in the latest version that they pushed out last month in BQE Core. But I'm looking at the project performance for a particular project, the Pasadena Elementary School. I instantly see all the KPIs. I can understand, again, in real time, how the project is performing from a financial perspective. It is the 95% of our invoices have been paid. I've got almost a 20% profit margin on here. I'm holding a $15,000 retainer. My company's invested $264,427 on this project, and we've got $64,000 of work in progress. People are putting time in their time cards, or I have billable expenses linked to this project valued at $64,000 that have not been pushed into an invoice by the system yet. Good information. I can scroll down. I'm not going to do that. Here I'm looking at a very similar kind of dashboard, but it's formatted to show KPIs about an employee. So everything I need to know about how this particular employee is performing. This is the performance dashboard. I can select the date range. How are they doing this year to date, this quarter, this month? And it just takes a click of the mouse to get the real-time data. Look in the upper right. I'm seeing, because I have permission to see, what is the ideal pay rate. So Jan DeMarco, I should be ideally paying her $54 an hour. That is her base salary. And the system understands that because it knows what she costs our firm, what she earns for our firm, what our profit expectations are in the company. And it says, pay her an ideal pay rate of $54 an hour, and you will make your 20% margin. And I can see I got a 20% margin from her. So that's probably perfect for us. It also tells me what's the minimum bill rate. I should not have her working on any projects for less than $167 an hour. This is what I talked about up front when I was asking you, do you know about employee margins? Do you know how much you should bill people out? The system can analyze this, and it changes from day to day or week to week or month to month, depending on the data that people put in here. I very frequently hear firms complain about how much time they spend creating reports. And so those of you in those Excel spreadsheets can probably commiserate here. It's kind of like a regular Groundhog's Day nightmare for people who find themselves doing the same things week after week, chasing after an employee to complete their time card, analyzing project completion values, updating billing information, chasing after your consultants to get, their expenses. It goes on and on. So the amount of effort used is shameful. The probability that that data is not really accurate in your spreadsheets is going to be incredibly high. Maybe you've got a calculated cell that's not properly formatted to include maybe a row or a column you inserted into your table later. Finally, when all those reports are created and made presentable, it's essentially just a historical document. You should never waste your time looking at information that can provide you with an opportunity to take action. So in this case, the core platform can actually create a report, any report you want, and there's hundreds of reports in the system, and it can create it in seconds. But the real point here is you shouldn't even have to do stuff like this. The system will allow you to schedule a report. So maybe you have a project manager or you yourself want to get a report. I'm more inclined to be less busy on Fridays after 3 in the afternoon. So just tell the system this particular report or this group of reports should be number crunched, generated as maybe PDFs if that's what you like, and sent to you on Fridays at 3 p.m. No human being gets involved in doing that work. And that saves the time of those individuals from doing this mundane work to do something that's actually valuable to the firm. Kind of early on, I kind of talked about having that business thinking mindset. And I talked about, business skills like accounting, things like that. That should be like the minimum skills that you would have. Most firm owners that I see look at really just 2 financial reports. Look at a balance sheet, and they'll look at a profit and loss or an income statement. Those reports in themselves are really just snapshots in time that tell you if you have enough of that oxygen at that very moment, but they don't tell you about what are your needs for the future. If the oxygen is actually keeping pace with what your strategic plan is for the year. If your firm is not creating an annual financial budget, you are not alone. Again, you're in that 75th percentile, which is to say you're really getting a solid C. What can help elevate you into a top performing firm? And it doesn't matter if you are 3 people, okay, or 13 people. It is not only to create that strategic plan that I said you should be doing annually at least, but ensure that that plan could become manifest by budgeting for it, making sure that you can afford to execute on those organic growth objectives that we kind of talked about earlier. Without a plan and without software that simplifies, automates, and reports back to you about how are you performing against that plan, you will have an impossible time getting out of that solid C. When you have the ability to manage a budget on an annual, a quarterly, or a monthly basis, like this system will allow, you have the ability to make plans. You can report on your performance against that budget, make changes based on the good or bad news that you are going to get. You will find the firm's weaknesses. You'll figure out what are your strengths, and you will get better at doing this work over time, because the more history you have of creating budgets and working towards them, it's really no different than working with a personal trainer who sets goals for you and creates the plan. So, you can achieve these things. And just like, when the more you work with your BIM software, you get better at it and better at it. So have systems in your firm that allow you to easily create and monitor your firm's budget. And the effort to require a budget really is a couple of clicks. And, I can typically create a firm budget with a financial budget for a firm within 15 minutes. We'll go through all of the chart of account items and set those budgets based on past ones. Okay. I also do want to take a moment. This is not like a sales thing. I just want you all to know I have to acknowledge the folks who are still at BQE Software who really allowed me to use their imagery. And I just encourage you all, if you are interested ever in looking at other systems out there, just reach out to those folks at BQE Software. They will give you a demo. They'll get on the phone on a virtual meeting like this, one-on-one, talk about your problems. What are you using today? Just to see if it's the right thing for you. So I won't give it any more of a sales spiel on that for them. We do have Q&A. So I don't know if Lisa's still with us, but I see Ruchi, you are here.
Yep, I'm
And
here.
I'm not going to lower that, but that's my spiel. And if there are people who are still here, hopefully there still are. Yeah, we got some people here. Good. I'll take some questions.
Thank you, Steve, for the wonderful presentation and providing us with the business management highlight that every firm should implement. Definitely, there are some things which I struggle with on a day-to-day basis. So hopefully I'm going to incorporate some of the things that we talked tonight. I'm going to now go over the Q&A. The first question we have is from Arben, and the question is that he's a sole proprietor and he has a part-time help. He finds it difficult to manage the actual project as well as the business growth. What advice do you have for someone in this position?
Yeah, so Arben, I don't know how many people are in the office, if it's just you alone or if you have some assistants. Was that made clear at all or not?
I think it's just him and the part-time help.
There is some part-time help. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I do an exercise with people, which is to determine what is the return on investment of any work you do. And that's why I always encourage people to track their time card. So you're putting in a lot of hours. A lot of your work is dealing with your projects, and your business is probably suffering from that. So one of the things I like with the software I was showing you earlier is if you track your time card on a granular basis and you know what you're working on throughout the week, you can actually connect the dots between the work you're doing and the return on that work. So the time is eventually going to be linked, hopefully, to an invoice, and you'll get to see where you make money or lose money. And it doesn't seem very obvious to you, but I will tell you, you will learn that a lot of things you do probably aren't necessary to do. So it's sort of like the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, which is 80% of all of the good things that result in your firm are happening because of only 20% of the things you in fact do. So if you can find the 80% of the things that you think important, and get rid of them or offload them to this part-time assistant, you will be more focused in doing high quality time that will bring the returns for you. It is very tough when you don't have a broad enough team of people to help carry the load, or even a business partner who you can share. You guys, you take care of this, I'll take care of that. But my part of the solution is understanding where your time is going and was it really worth it. I'll give you an example. I was working with a firm not too long ago who was really proud of their website. They had decided at the end of last year, we're going to upgrade our website. It feels dated, and they invested a good amount of time. They actually had somebody in the office who was a web person, and they could do that work. and they were very proud of their website. And I said, this looks beautiful. It looks basically like most every other architect's website, which is designed for the architect, not the client. That's another subject. But I said, how much time did you guys spend on this? And we were able to pull some reports to find out how many hours were spent and what the cost of that employee's time was to make this beautiful new website for them. Then we were able to look at, they were using just Google Analytics to look at the results on their website. There was no increase in traffic going to their website. There was no SEO work that improved visitors to their website. There was actually zero improvement. They could have left that website alone. That's just one example I just want to share with you of understanding the time you invest and what's the return on that investment of time. And you might think it's a high priority item, and I applaud you for identifying things that you want to work on. But if they don't improve the business, they don't drive more people. We actually gave it another quarter. We said, okay, you built it in the beginning of the year. Let's look at the first half of 2024 to see, because you were doing a little bit of marketing through social media, were they going to your website? You know, you were invested in building this great website. Were people going to it? And there was no change. So that's the kind of point I want to just make for you is determine from the Pareto principle, where are your efforts actually bringing positive results?
Yeah, and monitoring all the analytics that comes to your website and see where basically the client is going.
It costs very little. I've been using a product for a couple of clients called Hotjar, which is almost free. You can get it for free, but you can get a little bit more tools. But it's basically, it's gonna maybe hit your Starbucks budget or something like that. And you can watch every visitor on your website and see where they go. Do they click that menu item? Do they look at that project? Do they scroll through the images? Is it working the way you want? You can speed up the video and watch it. You can clip all the, you know, all the idle time on it, and how long, you know, do they go, what pages do they go to? It gives you incredible information about the behavior of a visitor to your website. And here's what I find, and I mentioned this earlier, your website should speak to the visitor in terms that they understand, because they probably don't understand what architects do. And you're very proud of your projects. They probably are beautiful, and it's a portfolio for you, but it doesn't answer the questions that your clients have. So if you want to really differentiate you, first do a SWOT analysis. Look at your competitors. So you're in New Jersey, look at all the people in New Jersey or Pennsylvania or New York, whatever, who are competing against you for the market that you are in. Look at all of their websites. See what they say, what's their story, and change your story to be unique to you. I mean, you have to be honest about your story and answer their questions that are in the, teach your client. Don't just show off who you are. Teach them stuff when they come to your website. Write blog articles. They don't have to be long. They could be 250 pages, 250 words. They don't have to be massive 2,000 word blog articles. Contribute, make your website helpful and relevant. And you will see, I think, if you run the analytics on those, that you're providing value and differentiating yourself, which is, I think, what every client is looking for. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I have Squarespace, and it gives me a report every month where people go, what links do they click, and gives me a fair idea every month how many clicks do I see.
But Ruchi, I know I'm sorry to put you on the spot here, but you opened yourself up for this. So I want to ask you, because I said, whenever you get a report, I wouldn't waste my time on a report if it doesn't change my behavior. So do you look at that report and say, huh, I'm going to go back to the website. It's easy. It's in Squarespace. I'm going to do something different. Do you literally take the information and make changes? Or do you, like so many people, get the report and say, we had 140 new visitors last week. This is great. Be honest.
I don't. Okay. I'll be honest.
Okay. So all I'm suggesting is, if you've instrumented a website, okay, and you're getting reports on it, do something. Is it good news? Is it bad news? Is it just, yeah, but either don't bother getting the report. Don't bother with the report if you're not going to do anything about it. I would just say, hey, let's set aside some 2 hours next week to really analyze what we're learning about our website and how can we make it better. So
I think, yeah, that's one of the things that we struggle as a sole proprietor, going
yeah.
back to the website, fixing it, making changes on a regular basis.
Yeah. So you're like Arbin. It's like we're wearing all the
Exactly.
hats. Yeah.
Sloan, you want to take the
The
next?
next question here, it's from Ben Horton. He says, it frustrates me to hear architects turning down certain jobs and then complain about income, etc. Do you think architects should think about the business of architecture as a service-oriented business and not just about design-oriented projects?
Okay, so great question. And I will say that when you prepare the fundamentals of a strategic plan are very simple. When you start with what is our firm's mission, right? Why did we even open this office? Okay. Would the marketplace be just as fine if I did not exist? Okay. And what's the vision? Meaning, where do I want to see our firm in 10 years or whatever? It's a little more aspirational. The mission is what was the purpose for creating a business? The vision is where you want that business to go. And if there are projects you're turning down, it has to be because it's not fulfilling your vision. I have no problem with people turning down work. I find some firms are very clear what they want as a vision in their firm. And if they take work because it can keep us busy, it will denude the goal. It's going to just make it less vivid, the goal. It's going to be harder to do that because you're filling your time with work that isn't fulfilling the vision. So I wouldn't rush to judge anybody for turning down work, which is another reason why I said if you're marketing, the best time to market your firm is when you have no room for work. You are too busy to take on any projects, because when you've got a void to fill, you're going to take on those bad calories, okay, that may not fulfill your vision. So the mission, the vision, and the goals for your firm have to always be reviewed if a project comes in the door. I made the mistake very early in my career. I opened my firm in 1993. In 1990, I had 7 years at SOM. I loved working on big, complex projects. We were doing single-family residential work in Chicago. And an offer came in the door to do a feasibility study for a project that would be better suited at SOM. But I had 7 years of doing that work. I didn't care about our firm's vision, which was to serve high net worth individuals in the residential area in the Chicago region. I'm doing that. I did that. It distracted us. It was a complete financial nightmare for our firm, and I lost sight of the goal. So I hear the reason you're complaining is you're a service business. You can serve everybody. But if it's not part of your vision to serve everybody, then don't. If your vision is very broad, I just want to be the best architect working on any kind of project for any client base, be a jack of all trades for all people, then yeah, you can take that work on, but don't dismiss other firms that might turn that away because they realize it'll distract them from their goal.
We have another good question from Brian. He's asking, how do you deal with competition? Is it awareness or actively pricing to beat?
Phenomenal question from Brian. Well, first you have to understand your competition. And that's why I asked you to look at how they present themselves. And I have on occasion asked to see proposals that they've received from when I've won a project. I said, can you just show me these proposals that you received from so-and-so? Because I really was very curious to understand how they present themselves. I will tell you, I've seen so many proposal letters and contracts from architects. Sometimes they use AIA documents to create those, which means all of that boilerplate is leveling you. It's like getting to the common denominator for all of your firms. And then your client has almost no way to make a decision other than price. And you never want to be in that position of trying to get the work by beating You know, oh, they tell us they can do it for this, you know, amount or this hourly rate or this percentage of the cost of construction, and you're trying to get it for that. It should be always obvious in your client's mind, your value. So I'm a huge proponent in treating your proposal letter. This is either accompanying a contract, or it depends on the scale of the work you do, or it is the entire contract, to be as unique, standout document as possible. I have examples of proposals that other firms have given me that are exquisite. You cannot ever figure out which was the proposal from, you know, Brian, you know, which was his proposal. It is obvious. It is what my old business partner and I used to call it the Jesus Christ moment in a, you know, like if you ever walk in a building and someone's in a building or a home and it's like, this is nice, this is nice, this is nice, Jesus Christ, right? It's the thing that you will take home and remember. And every proposal that I have saved in my template of extraordinary proposals are Jesus Christ proposals. They are memorable. They are gorgeous. And that's another way, I guess I would tell you, to deal with your competition is stand out and be different from them. There are infinite ways you can do that in how you present yourself. But if you're presenting yourself as being a low bidder, I don't think you ever want to put yourself in that position. I'd rather walk away if that client is trying to squeeze you down to that point. If you go down there, they're not appreciating you. They have to appreciate your value. So you got to teach them why you are what you are. I'm working on a presentation. I'm giving a keynote talk at the AIA Long Beach tomorrow night, and I was doing an analysis showing how at the end of a project, like a client will come to you and say, we want you to build a home for $2 million. And your fee might be set as a percentage of the $2 million. The client's actually going to spend almost twice that, sometimes more than that, on the total project development costs for acquiring the land, any carrying costs for permit fees and engineering services and you know, the general contractor and the construction costs. And there's a whole bunch of things that add to that. In the end of that analysis, the architect is being paid only 5% of what the total project costs their client, even though the contract says they're getting, you know, 12%, whatever that might be. There's an architect that I know in Chicago who presents to his prospects that he charges them 18% of the cost of construction. They go, whoa, I got other people who are telling me it's 15 or 12. And he's like, this, by the way, this is not my advice. Do not do this. Okay. Don't come back to me. He says, what do you tip your waiter? And they're like a little confused. And he's like, you probably get a bill from your dinner and you tip them 20% for that experience of, you know, your appetizers and your cocktails and your wine and all these things and the dessert and all of it. And they just give a number and you pay 20% to a guy who just, or a gal who just picked it up from the kitchen and delivered it to you. And hopefully they did it with a smile. I'm going to be working with you for 1, 2, 3 years. I'm only asking you to tip me. This guy, I'm telling you, tip me 18%. Give me as much credit as you give your waiter. I would never have the gumption to do that. It works for him. And he's very successful, but it was an eye-opening thing. So anyway, I've rambled on long enough about that, but I'm grateful to you for saying we can go on for a bit. So, because I do ramble. Hopefully that addressed Brian's question.
Here, the next question is from Reagan. Can you compare BQE Core or BQE versus Deltek software in terms of relevance to a small architecture firm?
Yeah. And okay, my caveat is, while I left BQE software, I'm still a major shareholder in the company. So take this with a grain of salt. Okay. I am biased in this, and I'm very fond of BQE. So Deltek, back around 2014 or 15, acquired a company called Axiom that had a product called Ajira. And they still market the Ajira product, which was probably a great tool for small and mid-sized firms. They had a product called Vision. Today it's now Vantage Point, and they are still trying to deal with the folks who use Ajira who won't give it up. It's a fine product. It's an old technology. The company is very different in that it really outsources all of the work to other people, implementers. The difference is BQE software is everything. It builds the software, develops the software. It does all of its tech support. It has, it doesn't outsource anything to a contractor to make sure that your firm succeeds. And it also invests an incredible amount of time in developing the software. Is always state of the art. They this year they instituted AI features throughout the software, which I use all the time, which I'm very happy to have in there now. It's like if I forget how do I do something in the software, I just use the AI tool and it goes, oh my God, it does it. So it's like Deltek is the 800-pound gorilla in the space. Last I checked, 12% of their customers were architects. They really are in government contracting and manufacturing. There's aerospace. There's bigger fish for them. Architects are a small piece of their business, where it is like 90% of BQE's business is architects and engineers. So those are the differences. But for everything, I would say get a demo. Reach out to BQE. Say, hey, I heard about that BQE Core. Can we have a little demo of it? Talk to people about, is it the right tool for my firm? Do the same with the folks at Deltek and just see what the difference is in the way they treat you. And maybe you'll be surprised and say, Deltek actually changed since Stephen told me this. They're now taking better care of their customers. But that's my long-winded answer to that question on the difference between the two.
So going back to the BQE question, Steve, is there like a light version for sole proprietors in BQE where the features are lesser and the cost is less for firms which have only one or two people?
Yeah, so they do have a package. We realized this problem back in 2017 or 18, that the pricing structure tended to benefit people the larger the firm got, and the small proprietor firms or the 1 and 2 person shops were really suffering because of that cost. And by the way, it's not very expensive. If I think about it, it's like having a license to use Microsoft Office or something. It's like, it's not that terrible. But they do have a package that gets you like time and expense tracking and billing and project management. Those 3 things, which are sort of like fundamentals pieces of information. You don't need the HR module. You don't need the CRM module. You don't need to build your proposals in it. Those things are you can up and add those packages. And they made special pricing for smaller firms to make that happen. So I don't get involved in anything any longer at the company level, but check in to see what it is. The point is not to make it a barrier to use. We've always wanted people to have the right software in their firm, the right structure and consistency. And if the cost was too much, something's wrong with the firm's not listening to the customer. So they need to listen. So I'd push back on that. By the way, there's another product out there. It's called Monograph. Maybe many of you have heard about that. I like it very much. It is a very light touch tool, has a pretty low learning curve, and it starts to give firms discipline in like running a project. It does hit a wall when you get to a certain size, like if your firm is growing and you want more tools and it doesn't have them. It reminds me of quite a bit of what ArchiOffice was like back in 2004 and 5 when we first launched, because it's a new player. It's a couple years in, but it's a great one, and I would encourage you all to look at that as well. I know, because I hear back from the CEO at BQE that they do get calls from Monograph customers who want to now move up to into core because they've hit the limit of what they can do, and they can't do all the things that core does, and they like having it all in a single system, and so they migrate people out of that. But I think if your firm is if you haven't heard of it, or look at it, please. It might be a good, what do they call that? Gateway drug to get you into using technology in the office to, help run things a little bit if you're just using those spreadsheets.
Typically, on a yearly basis, what percentage would you think of everybody should put on a yearly basis for business development? Is there like a certain rule, 5% of the profit that you make?
Yeah, well, there's different metrics that people will. So, I mean, I've heard things like, you're talking about marketing. I'm familiar with a metric like 7% of your net revenue should be put into technology, right? So if you whatever that would be, build $100,000, maybe $7,000 goes into your technology tools, but whatever that might look like. I don't know what it is for marketing. I would say I would work in the other direction, which is not just say, well, last year we made, I'm just using $100,000 because the math is easy on me, because I'm like Galileo, I'm not great with the numbers. But I'll spend $7,000 on technology. Instead, I would say, what do I want to achieve? I want more people, drive people to my website, or I want more. I want to spend more time creating marketing materials for social media that will get people in our area excited by the work we do. And how much would that cost? Build it from the bottom up. Okay, so you could say I got a project to design, and the client has a $2 million budget. When you're all done with it, and you tell them, you really need $3.5 million to do this, they're going to end up spending the $3.5 million. But they know that because that's what the foundation costs, an exterior wall, and the roof, and all these materials come together. So start by what is it you want to create with, marketing or whatever, and then double check it against. You can double check it to make sure you can afford it, which is why the financial budgets that I was showing you in BQE Core are very helpful, because you could see, here's our bottom line, and we have, $7,000 to spend on marketing this year, and that represents, whatever that, X% of it. And then you can actually also look at, did we hit those marks, right? So you look at the expenses, and are we spending the money? Because if you have a goal to say, we want to spend $7,000 in marketing, and Q1 rolls around and Q2 rolls around, and you've only spent $1,000, clearly you're not doing the work. You're not going to reach that goal, because you knew we need to do 4 social media posts that we want boosted on Facebook and Instagram and House and TikTok, and we're not doing that. We're not spending the money. So if you don't spend the money like you plan to, either it's because you don't have the money, or you're not focused, like that very first question, on the right things to reach the goals.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a question. It's not exactly a question. Maybe you can comment on. It seems to me that architectural fees are affected and kept low because of the antitrust laws and the fear of that. And there's a certain psychology that architects over time have developed where they're afraid to charge too much. It's just become like kind of ingrained in the profession that we don't make a lot. And I think those two things to me seem to have a really negative impact on the amount of money that architects charge. I don't know, any thoughts on that?
Well, there was an antitrust issue when architects started to try and set fees, and kind of like colluded amongst themselves to do that. That's now forbidden. But you are right. Architects are afraid. But it's because of something someone else mentioned before. It's because the competition out there is afraid. And so it's like a race to the bottom for fees, because it's like the sharks smell it in the water that, wow, these people can be abused so badly with their fees.
But why is that in our profession? And like,
Why is
doesn't,
it-
like, whereas other professions seem to think so highly of their work, it doesn't seem
Yeah,
to exist to the
well-
same extent.
Well, the AIA has tried to make attempts in the past to promote the profession of architecture in the eyes of the public. I think we all know something like only 10% of the built environment in the United States is using an architect. So when 90% don't really even need architects, it's kind of hard to imagine that it's a profession worthy of that kind of respect. That I don't know how many surgeries happen without a doctor, there, or how many lawsuits are conducted without a lawyer, but a lot of building happens without architects. So I don't know. It's a tough, it's a yeoman's task to convince people, the public, from the AIA's perspective, that architects are worth a certain, that they're worth. It's really on your shoulders to prove your value. Word of mouth from your past clients. I loved working with Lisa. It's like she cared so much about everything that, and the work was extraordinary, and she did listen to us, and she made sure we had what we wanted. Those testimonials, most people will show them on their websites. But it's an educational process to explain. I don't think the architect in Chicago that compares their services to a waiter is smart, but as I said, it works for him. That's another reason why, how you differentiate yourselves. So most architects these days, it seems there's a blend. We'll do some hourly fees during, pre-design, maybe schematic design, then we'll lock it down and we'll fix our fee. We'll maybe fix it based on a number that came out of nowhere, or we'll fix it based on the budget, and the budget gets blown, and then you feel bad about raising your fees because the project was 2 million, now it's 2.5 million, and you don't change your fees because you feel embarrassed by asking for money. But you have every right to ask for that money. But if it's a commercial project, it's almost like easier to sell a fee because of the value. My firm is going to do things like we're going to be able to get your rents higher than the standard because of the design of our building, and for every dollar per square foot we can increase your base rate at, we want 15 cents, something like that. There's things you could talk about. You don't have to be afraid about, which is, by the way, why you need to have a business thinking mindset. Because if you can actually stand toe to toe with a client who's a business person and give them a business rationale for what you're going to do, and give them you're being incentivized to create the best you can. I don't know, there's no end to this kind of a discussion, but I hear you, Lisa. It's we dug a hole, and the public, we're fighting against builders, build house plan people, or they commoditized architecture so badly that, but there are people who, like, what do they call those concierge medical practices that are out there now, where people pay fees above what you would normally need to pay with your health insurance? They are finding that the doctors have struggled with this, because that's a tough profession as well to really make money on, surprisingly, is they're trying to find ways to cater, to give concierge service at the medical profession stage. Helps differentiate them from other doctors, gets you feel like you're getting the care you need. I think, look into these things. It's like Steve Jobs looked at, what was it? I forgot which hotel it was, not the Four Seasons, but one of those hotels that had a concierge desk that he loved. And so that's how he came out with the Genius Bar. It's like, what can we do? Not only what could we do different, because there really wasn't much about retail stores for computers other than like the really horrible computer stores, but how could we give what the market needs? People needed questions. They don't understand the technology. So we're going to give them concierges. It was never thought of before. Now it's like, it's expected. I'll bet you there's somebody here today that can come up with an idea about how I can provide my client with services, post-construction services, things that differentiate you. Yeah, I'm going to just ramble at least until you interrupt me here.
Okay, well, anyway, I think you've provided us with a lot to think about, and it was very enjoyable and informative presentation. So we thank you for that. I think here on the East Coast, it's getting late. It's still early for you, but for us, it's getting late. So maybe we'll call it a night. And you said you had 70-something lectures, so maybe we'll have you back again for another topic, because I think people enjoyed this one.
Okay.
So anyway, so thank you, and thank all the attendees, and please get involved also in the small firm exchange, because we could use your input. And good night.
Okay. Night all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen.
Yeah. Take care.
Bye-bye.